rise in average price of goods and services over time is referred as inflation. The IMF offers a true analysis of inflation that covers its definitions, measurement, causes, effect, and historical examples. It also offers specialized analysis and policy recommendation on monetary and economic issues, making it trustworthy sources of information. And the pace of price goes during specific time, the general increase in price or the rise in nation costs, leaving out two examples of price inflation measures.
Assalamualaikum and hi. Today I'm going to explain about the trend of inflation in Malaysia from 2015 to 2019. Based on the graph of trend inflation in Malaysia from 2015 to 2019, it changed from 2.1% to 0.7%. On 2015 and 2016, the inflation rate remained the same, which is 2.1%. It is constant because of a stable economic conditions. When an economy experiences stable economic conditions with consistent level of growth, employment, and productivity, it can contribute to a steady inflation rate. If there are no significant shocks or disruptions to the economy, such as sudden changes in oil prices or major policy changes, inflation can remain relatively constant. Other than that, it could be because of monetary policy. Central banks often use monetary policy tools to manage inflation. By adjusting interest rates, open market operations, or reserve requirements, central banks can influence the money supply and subsequently the inflation rate. If the central bank implements effective monetary policy, it measures to keep inflation in check, and it can lead to a stable or constant inflation rate. Next, in this graph, shows that inflation increased to 3.9 on 2017. It could be because increased household incomes from more jobs and higher wages, along with an increase in consumer spending, boost aggregate demand, and open the door for their business to raise the price of their goods and services. Inflation rises when this takes place across a significant number of industries and businesses. Businesses and consumers spend more money on goods and services as the economy expands. Demand often exceeds supply during the boom phase of an economic cycle, allowing companies to increase their prices. The rate of inflation therefore rises. From 2018 to 2019, it keeps on decreasing from 0.9% to 0.7%. Malaysia has experienced less dramatic price increase than other nations. Fuel subsidies and price regulations help to keep inflation at a manageable level. However, the country can incur significant costs as a result of such actions. This is due to the fact that the government will need to continue spending a lot of money to keep prices low. Different variables, including the money supply, exchange rate, unemployment rate, overall budget. Inflation is affected by a number of deficit and economic conditions.
Categories of goods that contribute most to inflation in Malaysia. There are so many categories of goods that contribute most inflation in Malaysia, but we narrowed down it to top 3, which are food and beverage, restaurants and hotel, and transport. So, the first category that contributes the most is food and beverage, about 5.8%. Being aware of prices is a part of price control. It goes beyond simply establishing a price floor or offering subsidies. Why are we targeting this category? It's because people will actually buy it even though it's expensive to them, because it's a need and things for them to survive. Here are examples of inflation subgroup foods and beverage.
Next, the category of goods that contribute most of inflation in Malaysia is restaurants and hotel. How the restaurants and hotel contribute most inflation to Malaysia is because of the demand. Locals and visitors alike drive a typically high demand for restaurants and hotel services. The demand for eating out and hotel stays rise as the economy expands and people's incomes rise. Because of the strong demand, prices increase, which fuels inflation. Operating costs follow that. Rent, utilities, salaries, and the cost of raw supplies are just a few of the costs associated with operating a hotel or restaurant. Business attempt to pass on rising operational expense to customers by raising prices, which fuels inflation. Next, due to the following reasons, restaurants and hotels frequently purchase imported goods. Why? Because restaurants and hotels can offer a greater range of goods and ingredients by importing commodities that might not be easily accessible locally. Customers may enjoy improved menu alternatives and distinctive dining occasions as a result. Seasonal and special events countless. Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, and International Conference are just a few of the annual celebrations and events that Malaysia celebrate. Restaurants and hotels frequently witness a spike in business of certain days, enabling them to impose higher costs. Such occurrences help explain the occasional inflation surge. Lastly is transportation, a result of fuel costs. The price of gasoline has a significant impact on transportation costs since it directly influences the cost of petrol, diesel, and other transportation-related energy sources. When fuel prices rise, transport costs rise as well, raising the cost of products and services overall as well as the inflation rate. Import dependent is next. Malaysia's energy requirements are largely satisfied by imported fuel. Transportation expenses within the nation may be directly impacted by any changes or disruptions in the price of oil on a worldwide scale. If oil prices rise globally, Malaysia could have to pay more for imports, driving up the cost of travel and boosting inflation. Costs associated with infrastructure development and upkeep are also important to consider. These expenses include building new roads, railroads, and public transportation systems, as well as maintaining the existing infrastructure. These expenses are typically passed on to customers in the form of higher transport service charge, which might raise inflation.
Example for transportation is oil, where higher inflation tends to lead to higher oil price, and then the cost of transportation like public transport, train, airplane, and taxi.
This is how individuals deal with high cost of living in Malaysia. First is budgeting and financial planning. Second is seeking additional sources of income. And number 3 is adopting cost-saving measures. Budgeting and financial planning. Making wise financial and budgetary decisions is one of the best methods for people to deal with the rising cost of living. This entails keeping track of costs, giving requirements, precedence over wants, and establishing reasonable financial objectives. Individuals can find areas where they can reduce their expenditure and make savings by making a budget. Seeking additional sources of income. People might look for alternatives for other sources of income to supplement their normal income. This can entail launching a side business, doing freelance work, or getting a part-time employment. Individuals can improve their financial security and better handle the high cost of living by diversifying their sources of income. Adopting cost-saving measures. In order to lessen the effect of price increases, people can also incorporate numerous cost-saving strategies into their daily life. This entails conserving energy at home, cutting back on unnecessary spending like eating out or purchasing luxuries, and when possible, choosing more economic alternatives.
This is how government deal with high cost of living in Malaysia. First one is price control and regulation. The second one, investment in infrastructure. And the third one, education and skills development. So for the first one, price control and regulation, to limit the cost of critical products and services. The government can enact price control measures, setting price caps, keeping an eye price changes, and taking legal action to stop price gouging or unfair pricing. Pesticides are some examples of this. The government can lessen burden on citizens and raise the price of accessibility by enforcing fair pricing. So for the second one, investment in infrastructure to promote connectivity between urban and rural areas, lower the cost of logistics, and improve transport networks. The government might engage in infrastructure development by promoting effective distribution and lowering transportation costs. This can assist in lowering the cost of goods and services. So for the last one, which is education, skills and development, to give people information and skills they need for work in high-paying industries. The government is essential in providing quality education and skill development programs. Government can increase employability and income levels and lessen the effect of the high cost of living by making investment in education, vocational training, and the development of technical skills.
Conclusion, dealing with the high cost of living in Malaysia requires a combination of effort from both individual and the government. Individuals need to practice effective budgeting, seek additional sources of income, and adopt cost-saving measures.
So, on the other hand, the government can implement price control measures, invest in infrastructure, and prioritize education and skills development. By working together, individuals and government can alleviate financial burden caused by the high cost of living and improve the overall well-being of the nation.
In conclusion, the government of Malaysia is making an effort to curb inflation. Yet, the problem is still exists. The Malaysian government has put in place a number of measures to lessen the consequences of inflation, including increasing the interest rates and subsidies and necessities.
The pandemic has further strained Malaysia's economy, according to IMF, by upsetting global supply networks and escalating inflation. The consumer price index (CPI) inflation is still declining, albeit slowly, so there are signs of recovery.
Inflation's impact on low-income households will be lessened with continuing government assistance for vulnerable individuals, such as cash transfer and targeted subsidies, according to the World Bank.
Overall, policymakers and economists are still concerned about the impacts of inflation in Malaysia. Thus, it is crucial for the government to put in place practical measures to lessen such effects and guarantee long-term economic